At a certain point in life, you really start to question if you still like playing video games the same way you did as a kid. Short answer? No. I don't really feel like I have the mental capacity to fully engage myself in a game nowadays. Playing video games as a kid? Piece of cake. Easy stuff. But being in college, having a relationship, a social life, hobbies, emotions, and an actual job? There are no more early school days ending with coming home to continue a specific game or pick up a new one. No, these are different times. I had a few ideas about what to start with on this channel, but I think that if I really want to bring across why I want to make these overly complicated white people video essays on nerd culture, I need to start with a game I started playing for the very first time just 2 years ago. A game that really reignited my love for gaming and made me remember the reason why I love it so much, and that was the Resident Evil Remake. Remastered. PC version? What do I call this game? Okay, so before we start, hi, my name is Vanitas, or Mike, you can call me whatever. Gungaga. And I've never done this, whatever it is you're about to watch. Don't expect one of those well thought out YouTube essays like one of the many talented people on screen are able to do. I might change the way this video is structured halfway through, fuck if I know. I'm just a guy in his mid-20s holding on to the last bit of sanity he has in the times of So what's my aim here? Well, I want to make an interesting analysis and dissect all possible facets of this game to properly convey why it's so important to me and how it does everything so well. But I am not very academically inclined, so I also want to make an entertaining, fun, and totally bonkers XD video for you guys to watch on the toilet. And hey, who knows? If I like making this kind of crap, why not make more down the line? Anything goes. Ever since I was a kid, I decided that video games would be my shtick, especially once I got a hold of the PS2. While growing up, I had built a steady library of PS2 games. But video games are so much more than that one library. There's a much bigger world out there. How do I put this? Let's take Smash Bros, a franchise I'm really fond of. You get to see all these franchises pop up, some you might have never even heard of. And you want to learn more about them, right? Especially growing up in the digital age, I was there alongside some of you right next to the hospital bed watching YouTube being born. It was the arrival of a new era where we could find everything we wanted online. I had scoured wikis, watched let's plays, talked to people all about games I had never played myself. And the issue here was, being so obsessed with information, I always spoke as if these were my own experiences. Imagine formulating your own opinion on the internet. I wasn't into a lot of things growing up. I wanted at least to be sure of my quirky knowledge. I know, looking back on that mindset, I too cringe uncontrollably, and that brought up another issue. You see, if you spend years on years learning about certain games and never touching them, your backlog becomes a fucking dungeon of necessities. Nowadays, I am terrified of big games. I am terrified of Yakuza, Zelda, Monster Hunter. Not terrified in terms of whether or not I might think they're good or bad, but terrified in the amount of content they can give you. I remember as a kid, I could cruise through games without any care in the world. It was just plain old fun. Now I get a fucking panic attack if I consider picking up Pokemon again. I want the full experience, and spending time on a game that will require weeks of my active life scares me as an adult. It's much easier to pop in a game you know all too well instead of starting a new big one. We all know the meme known as your Steam library. You buy games, get gifts, throw in a humble bundle or two, and there we go. You get a shit ton of games, and you have no idea where to start, so you just buy a new one, rinse and repeat. Alongside that, today I could play a game on the consoles I own, or even emulate most of it. Combine that with that prior knowledge of games that are considered good, what the fuck do I do? I landed on a game we're going to be talking about pretty much out of necessity. The last few months of 2019 really fucked with me as a then 23-year-old. And this was all even before the entry of coronavirus! During that 2019 slump, I discovered a lot of Twitch streamers I got to really like. I tried streaming in the past, but January 2020 was the year I actually started really using it as a way to deal with stuff. I always tell friends that there's 3 reasons I started streaming. 1, to finally catch up on that backlog. 2, actually a follow-up, I can't finish games because I keep quitting. Twitch was an incentive to keep going. I noticed that my motivation was higher if I shared the playthrough with others. And 3, to give myself some routine. I desperately needed something to hold on to and to actually spend my days worthwhile at the same time. So yeah, streaming. What am I streaming? I don't know. Shit. In the December 2019 State of Play that Sony aired, there was one announcement that caught my eye more than any other. A remake of Resident Evil 3. Nemesis. I was aware of how big a deal Nemesis was, and I knew him from trying to learn his combos in Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. I knew how successful the remake of RE2 was. I knew RE4 was one of the best games ever made in a lot of people's eyes. Yet the only Resident Evil games I've ever played were 5 and 7. I'd have a few months until Remake rolled around to catch up with the other 2 games. This was my opportunity. Okay, I promise that we will finally start talking about Resident Evil now.
Resident Evil, more terrifying than ever, comes to Nintendo GameCube. Spine-chilling action. Devastating weapons. Unspeakable evil. Live the nightmare. Resident Evil, exclusively from Capcom. Rated M for mature, only on Nintendo GameCube.
Did you know? When Nintendo was trying to gain the upper hand over Sony after the PlayStation had destroyed the Nintendo 64, Nintendo struck a deal with Capcom for exclusive rights to their Resident Evil IP, meaning that any further games made for the franchise would only be playable on GameCube. All previous games got ported, and an exclusive was released in 2002, a remake of Resident Evil 1. Original game director and resident madman Shinji Mikami felt as if the original Resident Evil didn't age as well compared to some of the later entries. Upon sealing the GameCube deal, he realized the Cube was capable of now fully translating his original vision of the game to newer players. Capcom Production Studio 4, known at the time for their Dino Crisis entries, spent just a little over a year developing this remake. Production started at the beginning of 2001 with a team of only 4 programmers. As Capcom's marketing director Todd Thorson said, the main goal was to achieve motion picture quality visuals and create even more suspense and fear than the original. That's all I can give you right now in terms of behind-the-scenes lore. I definitely recommend watching the Sphere Hunters video on this game, which I will link in the description. Susie, being a huge Resi fan, might give you some more insight compared to my beginner-level views on this franchise. That being said, remakes and remasters! Oh boy. Some people praise the wave, others deem most of them coming out way too early after the game they're based on. I don't really care. It's great if a remake does something really different from the original source material, or if it updates it for a new generation of players who are not used to older visuals or controls. I think there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Look at Medieval or Shadow of the Colossus. There's something to be said about making original IPs, or at least sequels, but hey, if you've got good content lying around, why not just rehash it? You know? This specific GameCube remake came out in 2002, 6 years after the original Resident Evil in '96. It did end up getting an updated HD port for next-gen consoles and PC years later in 2014, which is the version you're seeing the footage from. As of yet, I also haven't touched the original '96 release of Resident Evil 1 because I'm a pussy, so I'm only looking at what the remake has to offer as an introduction to the franchise and the story of RE. People told me things that kept me from going in. The tank controls, the fixed camera angles, the backtracking, the puzzles, the inventory management, and the ink ribbon saving system. I'm used to PS2 era action RPGs and adventure games. Maybe it would just feel too outdated for me. I've never been happier to say that I was wrong. The remastered version of the remake offered a new, more modern control scheme, instead of the classic tank controls. The easy mode. The chosen fixed camera angles added an extra layer of dread. The puzzles were very fun, and even the backtracking was enjoyable and easy to remember, thanks to the mansion's layout. I went through my first playthrough as Chris Redfield, followed by Jill Valentine, so I thought to swap those orders around for the sake of this video. I personally think that Jill's story is a lot more interesting to talk about. So even though we mostly will be talking about Jill's POV, like any RE fan will tell you, it's worth going through both. Let's start in the same place as the game, the intro cutscene. Oh, and I'm not talking about that super scary one that plays when you boot up the game. Yeah! I don't particularly care for this cutscene. It's not really a scary setup or tease. I don't know what this was about. I don't care. Compare this to the intro of the original game. The opening cutscene when you start a new game, on the other hand, cannot be done any justice by just talking about it. So I'm gonna give you guys a moment to watch it because it's a great introduction to that atmosphere I was talking about. You guys back? Cool. So now I'm gonna do the opposite of what I said and I'm gonna talk about it.
You fool!
Everything about this intro just hits the fucking mark for me, and I always feel like rewatching this setup. You find out a little bit about what the cast is doing there. The rest is up to your discovery as you progress through the game. You feel as lost and confused as everyone else running around. And then, as we enter the mansion, this happens.
There are only 3 S.T.A.R.S members left now. Captain Wesker, Barry, and myself. We don't know where Chris is.
The way it starts is different depending on who you chose. In Jill's version, it's Jill, Barry, and Wesker that make it inside, with Chris being mysteriously absent. However, in Chris's version, it's Chris, Jill, and Wesker with no clue where Barry is. Jill gets ordered by Wesker to investigate a gunshot and gets joined by Barry, while Chris, if chosen, goes out to investigate on his own without Wesker commanding him. Upon entering the dining room to investigate, you get a unique cutscene between her and Barry, which is one of many throughout her campaign. You even get some unique cutscenes if you try to return to Wesker before investigating, and even another one if you try a second time. Seriously, I'm gonna drag on about these cutscenes for a hot minute, but there's even a second cutscene with Barry near the blood puddle. All of these cutscenes are purely optional and up to your discovery. And just the way this game handles cutscenes is fucking brilliant. Once you discover there's nothing left to find in the dining room, you progress to the next room, where you get this very famous cutscene. That music stinger, that black background, that animation, that reveal, that slow walk. Oh look, Kenneth was a filmmaker. Hope we get to see this footage soon.
The filmmakers of substance.
After that pleasant encounter, you return to Barry, who shoots the zombie down, and you can report back to Wesker. So I hadn't touched the game in a while, so I was worried I might have missed something in my footage, I started looking at this long play, and something caught my eye. Something I didn't know was possible. A little bit of an explanation. Everything in this game runs on an internal clock. It's a timer that tracks how long you're taking to do something, which is very apparent in some later moments of the game. If you wait too long in the dining room before progressing, another cutscene plays where the zombie busts through the door and the reveal of zombies happens in that room instead. I didn't even know the possibility of this cutscene existed, and that is, once again, fucking brilliant. Also, Wesker is gone. So that's cool. Great. What a mansion. Honestly though, the mansion looks really good. They originally wanted to go with full 3D environments, but went with pre-rendered ones to save processing power on the GameCube. Despite this issue, I really like the pre-rendered backgrounds. They still blend in smoothly with the in-game models. Seriously, have a look at some of these environments with the occasional thunderstorm. I adore these visuals. Every corner of the map has a fixed camera angle dedicated to showing off specific shots of these surroundings. As I mentioned before, these angles contribute a lot to the mood of the mansion and your experiences in it. Some of them are placed so that you'll never know what's around the corner, or in a very weird frontal viewpoint where I constantly think it's a cutscene, but it's not. Yep, that happening in a game where zombies can just be off-screen ready to grab you can be a very scary thought. 99% of the game has you controlling a character in those surroundings, but upon entering doors, you enter a first-person view cutscene. It's almost as if the game is trying to make you feel like you, the player, is the one that's going through the door, slowly entering, while not knowing what Five Nights at Freddy's horrors might be on the other side. I remember every single room from this game. From the small cramped hallways near the Tiger Sans Undertale statue, to the Falcon Room, to the grand hall you start out in. Everything in this mansion has a purpose and a story to tell. Traversing through the mansion brings excitement, curiosity, but mostly impending fear. This movement throughout the mansion is entirely dependent on how you play, such as the knife-only run, which I swear I will attempt one day. The game gives you a variety of options to control your movement. If you flick the right stick, you make a quick turn. If you aim at an enemy, there's a soft lock-on. I never had any issue with facing an enemy in that regard. Each character comes with their own specific skills. Jill has 8 slots, a lockpick to open locked doors, and she gets access to a kick-ass grenade launcher that shoots acid rounds and flame rounds. But Chris gets access to only 6 slots and has to use the old key items he finds to open locked doors. He does have the lighter on him, which he can use to burn zombie corpses to prevent them from coming back. This is unlike Jill, who has to use the lighter as an actual item in her inventory space alongside the flask, resulting in 2 slots being used instead of just the one for the flask. Many say Jill's run is the easy mode, while Chris's gameplay is significantly more difficult. I tend to agree with this statement due to the points I made before, such as how Barry gives you supportive items and how Chris is more limited in his exploration and inventory, but there's no difference in their playstyle per se. It all depends on how you handle your inventory. That's the gameplay mechanic that really hammers the survival aspect home. I can't even begin to tell you how many times I was frustrated to find a key item while having a stacked inventory with herbs, ammo, or other key items which I thought would be useful to have on me. Spoiler, mostly no, because I'm an idiot and an item hoarder.
Tools! Tools! Duct tape, zip ties, and gloves! I have to have my tools!
So, what do you do in these moments? Is it too dangerous to run back to an item box? Do you have usable items? Or are they all key items? Do you expend, for example, a healing item to make room for the new one? Everything is based on choice. It's not like you can't take your time unless you really care about that score rank at the end of the game. The progression throughout the mansion is in chunks, meaning that discovering its secrets might be halted until you find the necessary items to access them. This is the case for both characters. Some doors are locked with specific keys that you pick up along the way, such as the armor key or the helmet key. These are all, for the most part, found doing the exact same puzzles in both campaigns. Managing yourself was the true horror all along. Fuck, that's cringe. The way you heal in this game also depends on your management skills. You can only take so many hits depending on your difficulty settings. In terms of cures, you have your green herbs, which are your heals, your blue herbs, which cure poison, and your red herbs, which are not usable on their own but can strengthen the effect of other herbs. You can combine herbs to form duo herbs like red-green, green-blue, or green-green.
Let that child alone.
You can even combine 3 different greens to get a full heal, much like a first aid spray, or even combine all 3 colors to get a full heal and a poison cure. Your access to healing items and ammo is limited, but not to the extent that the game will make you feel like you're out of options. Maybe, if you've been a reckless Andy, the final leg of your playthrough might be a bit of a struggle ammo-wise. The increments are the same. You're pretty limited in their use, and if you have played a big chunk and end up dying without saving at risk of using them, you might lose hours of progress depending on your playstyle. It boils down to this. There is always a risk. It's a zombie game. I mean, You know, they are easy to dodge if you take the time to read their movement. A lot of times, after they lunge at you, there's a couple of moments where they just have these long recovery frames. Plenty of time for you to either score a headshot or just make your way past them. There's ways to discover what they can do. For example, I found out that they can lunge at you on stairs, but they can't throw up. So that's nice. Also, this happened to me. Remember this glass cracking? There's only one way you can trigger this being busted down by the dogs. If you keep going around and avoiding that flag, you don't ever need to have that struggle. You can actually get yourself in danger pretty early on if you attempt to exit through the front entrance. If you try doing that, you just lead in the dogs that were chasing you in the intro cutscene. They're pretty fast and can be an issue if you're being reckless with healing, but your shotgun or even handgun will do the trick pretty easily. The enemies function more like roadblocks in hallway areas. There are some key rooms that are a bit bigger that have enemies, but mostly you can take your time in the smaller rooms to catch your breath. Occasionally, you can reach a well-earned safe room to get a breather. Safe rooms become not just this place to relax, but also to sit down and look at your inventory, to try and plan out your next course of action. Maybe take this time to figure out some of the puzzles you've been struggling with, you big baby. I'm also including the backtracking for items under the umbrella term of puzzles. As you might have noticed from my thoughts so far, I actually really enjoy walking through the map of this game. It helps that the mansion is pretty well organized, so it's fun to pick up its items and to run back to the place I need to use them. A lot of people still feel like this amount of backtracking is an outdated part of the game's design that should have been fixed, but I feel like the backtracking, constant figuring out where to go and what to use is the whole reason this works. Some rooms have progression needs, some are just for loot. The order in which you do everything in this game is sorta up to choice. It's still really cool that every playthrough might be different depending on your memory. Dissecting the puzzles one for one would kill their importance and the great way they have been used in-game. Some of my favorite early game puzzles include the Moonlight Sonata puzzle, the Fish Lure puzzle, and the Fake Key puzzle. I personally feel like some of the puzzling encounters in the later areas don't really hold up as much, but that's just personal taste. My favorite puzzle is a later one though, and that's the Falcon one. That one's just really fun to figure out. I also feel like this game has some of the issues most games with puzzles have. Think of some point-and-click King's Quest bullshit. Seriously, can someone tell me how I was supposed to figure out the fireplace map puzzle? It took me so fucking long the first time around, and by the time I figured it out, it wasn't even worth it anymore. Oh, and let's not forget the Four Knights puzzle. I'm not even gonna bother talking about that one. If you know, you know. Fuck that. The items function in tandem with not just your inventory, but also the environment. There's plenty of times where you can see items glistening and think, okay, what can I use on me and in the environment to get that? Puzzles like combining items or adjusting the environment, or inspecting items to find out the dog collar is actually a fake key to get the real key in an Indiana Jones trap room. Most of the time, these environment adjustments take a few moments out of progression just to pick up some optional items, but they can make your life a little more comfortable. Not related to items, but there is a door in the game that leads directly from the passage near a safe room to a more direct link to the main hall. However, it is a one-way passage, so you cannot get to the safe room quickly from the other end, and the handle breaks off after a few uses, making the door inaccessible. This is an area where you need to either take care of the zombies or plan how often you will need to use that door and if it's worth it. Some items might even turn out to not be useful to you in any way. There's an instance where you can get the shotgun early as Jill, involving the activation of a cutscene with Barry. A cutscene which you can totally miss if you meet up with him in the main hall first. If you do get him to rescue you, why is that so difficult to say? If you do get him to rescue you, this leads to him helping you in the infamous Jill sandwich scene.
That was a close one. A second late, you would have fit nicely into a sandwich.
If you activate this cutscene, you don't even need to fake shotgun replica. Chris, on the other hand, has no one to help him, so he's gonna have to be a big boy and solve the puzzle on his own. It's one of many in the game that is different depending on which character you're using. Jill knows how to play the piano, but Chris is a big dum-dum and needs Rebecca to do it for him. Oh right, Rebecca! Rebecca is the 18-year-old surviving medic of Bravo team, and originally I didn't write the kindest words for her in the script. I've been focusing a lot more on Jill and Barry. I kinda forgot what she was all about. I know I said that Chris remained mostly all on his own, but the truth is that he gets plenty of the same amount of encounters as Jill does. My original main gripe was that Rebecca just doesn't fit the same narrative purpose as Barry will later in the game, but she does have a pretty big purpose in gameplay. Throughout the game, she becomes your personal medic waifu, an active free healing station. Every time you go to her to heal yourself, she will talk to Chris for a little bit. There's this constant feeling of dread among the characters, like anyone can suddenly disappear or get hurt. Perfect examples are the Barry puddle scene or when you bump into Forrest. Anyway, Rebecca is nice. There is a lot more to her, but we'll save that for later. Something I want to talk about before we dive deeper into this mansion is the sound, and not just the stellar sound design. I'm talking about the soundtrack. Most of the game is ambient sounds, but some mysterious rooms have accompanying music to tell you that something is off or intriguing. I can't really do the music justice by talking about it, so play the game. And if you don't want to or can't, put on the OST. It's really good, but mostly fits around you actually playing through the game. It's almost time to wrap up this part of the video, but I glossed over a pretty big part earlier. The zombies. 'Cause it's a zombie game. And I should talk about them. Or rather, I should talk about the enemies instead. Random enemies don't drop an item or score bonuses, so there's no reason to kill them if you can run past them. However, they might pose a threat later. So, what do? Once again, a few options. Do you dodge the enemies in your way? Do you take the zombie bite, or do you have a defensive item to get them away from you? Will you use it, seeing as they're limited? Or can you heal yourself from taking the bite? Do you use the knife to slowly but safely kill the zombie in front of you, having the knife take up inventory? Do you instead use the limited ammo you have on this zombie, knowing full well that in the room further ahead there are two others packed together in a very tight space? And do you burn them or leave their corpse lying there? Yeah, it's a lot to take in, but after a few hours you come to terms with your own playstyle and priorities. Or so you think. I said in the beginning of this topic that I'd rather refer to the adversaries in this game as your enemies and not just zombies. Because true, the dogs and crows you fight are also zombified, but as you might know from Resident Evil lore, this is all because of a biochemical virus. So things tend to extend a little bit beyond just zombies. Your first real tease of what's to come is when you bump into a friend, Richard. This is where you also would encounter Rebecca for the first time as Chris. Richard says he's poisoned by a snake. Yeah, I know what I said. Treating Richard's wounds is another can of snakes entirely. Remember what I said about the internal clock? More on that snake bite in a bit, but you better hurry up with getting that serum or he's dead. No countdown on screen, no reminder, nothing. Just a brief snapshot on your map telling you where to go. If Richard dies, you lose him. Too bad. If you save him, he appears during a later boss fight for some assistance. The internal clock plays more into the gameplay than you think. Have you noticed this funky lad lying around throughout your early playthrough? Because if dogs, hornets, plants, and zombies aren't enough to hurt you, then let me introduce you to Crimson Heads. If you down a zombie and don't burn it or blow its head off, a timer starts to tick until they eventually rise up again as these speedy fellas who swipe real fast. Another risk-reward kind of deal in how you get rid of the zombie bodies in the mansion for the sake of not spawning more Crimson Heads. Resident Evil was built upon the idea of universal fear and horror. This means that no matter what culture you come from, you will find something that might creep you out. Some things are more primal fears than others. The game is filled to the brim with mutated animals that will scare the crap out of you. Dogs, crows,
bees, spiders, snakes, sharks,
Plants.
Aside from the doggies, the first thing you'll hear about is probably Richard's big snake. Meet Yawn. Yawn is a big snake. In this game, he looks like this. In the original game, he looks like this. I just wanted to show you guys that. I feel very confident in saying that even if you live in a place with no snakes whatsoever, you are still terrified of fucking snakes. This is exactly the kind of unnerving fear that Resident Evil builds upon. Also, I feel like Yawn is such an on-the-nose name, but I love it so much because of that. If you have managed to save Richard before, he will show up in this boss fight on Jill's end to deal some damage to Yawn for you. Ultimately, Yawn fakes out and kills Richard. However, Richard drops the assault assault shotgun, which is a really big upgrade from the regular shotgun, and you can only get this weapon if you have successfully saved him with the serum beforehand. And then Jan leaves. He just disappears. You just gotta find him some other time, so it's time for you to leave. As I was writing this, I discovered something cool once again to my surprise. If you got hit by Jan on his first encounter, you are poisoned. And not just regular blue herb, everything's okay poisoned. No, you gotta go over and fetch the serum for yourself once more. There is, however, an alternative cutscene where you just pass out and Barry drops you off. I fucking love the alternative cutscenes in this game. There's so much. It's so insane. There's an entire collection of possible flags you can trigger to have Barry appear in the room. I know I've spoken about this before, but the rewards of your actions are going to be shown to you the further you go into the game. It's baffling to me how well thought out all of this is. You want to know the best part? This happening to you as Chris leads to Rebecca doing the same thing Barry does. But instead of just dragging you to the room with the serum, she becomes an optional, playable character. That's right, you need to run back and get the serum for Chris as Rebecca. Suddenly playing as another character? Oh God, yes. I know that's a trend in games nowadays, but it's really cool to have it happen here. So yeah, good job, Rebecca. I like you now. Oh. Okay.
Rebecca!
How about another joke, Murray?
Jan comes back a little bit later in the game where you finally face him in one-on-one combat in the library section. In the original fake-out area, you can just let him circle around a pillar and take him down easily. But his actual boss fight arena is a little bit more open to you for running around. Easily my favorite boss fight in the entire game. On Chris's end, Richard helps you a little bit later by being devoured by Neptune. A shark. Yeah, I know what I said. When entering the Aqua Ring later in the game, you will need to keep moving. Because sharks. Once you make it to the control room, you figure out that there's a way to drain the water in the area. Cue Neptune and probably the most tense puzzle yet. Holy shit. I remember getting lost the very first time because I wasn't fully aware of where all the necessary interactable objects were supposed to be. And just the blaring of the alarm and the crashing of Neptune against the glass, it was bad, man. It's explained to you why these creatures are around, but not directly. You want lore? You gotta work for it. You might be used to getting your narrative fixed through cutscenes and actual story progression. Sure, you'll have the occasional notes and documents lying around, but these are to flesh out the backstory for those really interested in all that's going on. Remake is for the most part solely dependent on a chain of haunting events, wherein you, the player, can only get to know so much about the origins of this place. This can be done by actually picking up those notes and piecing it all together yourself. Yeah, okay, you fight a big snake, a big shark, and a gross Silent Hill cosplayer with mommy issues, but you don't really learn anything about these encounters in dialogue. A lot of info on how to deal with specific enemies can be found in these documents. Some of the very first diary entries you might find are from employees of the mansion, employees of Sir Spencer himself, or employees of the underground laboratory. They talk about their frustrations, the people on the grounds, and the more funky stuff they start to notice with each passing day. I feel like there is one document in the game that really pulls you into the world. And if you've played this game, you know exactly the one I'm talking about. The Keeper's Diary is a chain of events on how the Spencer mansion seemed to be the front for something a little more sinister. I had recorded a whole creepypasta segment of me reading the diary out loud, but I can't do this any justice. I suggest that once you bump into it, you try to fully immerse yourself in the writing by taking some time flipping through the entries. The groundskeeper is a cynical guy. After an accidental leak in the underground lab, he needs to go through some time in a hazmat suit. However, after not wearing it for a while, he starts to notice that something's up. Blisters, rotting flesh, skin falling off. And when he's almost lost it all, save for the ability to form barely passing sentences after stuffing his mouth with doggy food, we reach the final page of his diary. 4. Itchy. Tasty. I can't believe how the new Resident Evil movie can get this so fucking wrong. The movie is already a mess for combining two stories into one, but missing the mark so badly on the importance of this line in the franchise.
Capcom should stop hiring people that totally miss the nuances of their franchises. Yeah.
Back to the mansion. From this point onward in the video, I'm going to talk about some of the plot points and locations in the game in a pretty chronological order. The reason why is because the game really opens up from this point forward, and a lot of key moments will start to take place. This is really different from how I was doing it so far, so let me know in the comments which method you find most interesting to watch. I actually left out one aspect of the mansion's design in the previous part. There is a hidden wall at the top of the staircase. This hidden wall is actually a door that leads into a courtyard. It's this moody cemetery section with a crypt. A big part of your early progression has to do with this crypt, because you'll need to look for these JoJo's Bizarre Adventure stone masks. Something I think has become a staple for RE, because a similar puzzle was in their latest entry, Resident Evil Village. Upon placing all the death masks, the grave falls down and what looks like a crimson head is inside. This was, lore-wise, the first discovered crimson head that was locked away for further experimentation. This entire time, you thought you were trapped inside. But this is where you realize that this story reaches well beyond the confines of the mansion. Grabbing your newfound item from the crypt allows you to reach an area just outside of the mansion. You find a long, winding road, which leads to a signpost, currently having the best possible naming convention for places ever. Walking down, you get a call from Barry.
Somebody respond! Over!
Barry?
Monster! James! Gun! Ineffective! It's it! Stay away! Forest outside mansion! Stay! Hey!
Aside from touching grass, you might notice a clear lack of zombies in the environment. Just an eerie landscape with the occasional crow. Upon entering through a gate in the courtyard, you get stopped by your ear holes catching something familiar. Standing all the way at the end of this path is a nice cozy shed, with fresh firewood burning into a fire. Yet the bed is unused. There are signs of blood and bandages. A family picture is found alongside a diary. We'll come back to this. After digging around, finding what you need for the other path, you hear the door open. One quick camera angle later, and there's this fleeting image of someone passing by. Time to get the fuck out of here. What the actual fuck? Now you either listen to Barry or you figured out the hard way that your bullets will do jack shit. Time to get out of there and use your newfound item to make progress. And this is how we reach the residence. Prepare yourself for big spiders, lots of puzzles, and writing things down. Ooh. This is pretty much a miniature version of the mansion. It has its own rooms, puzzles, and things to remember for just this specific area. Is there a lot of backtracking? Possibly. Most of the backtracking here is entirely optional. There's still a surprise around every corner though. Cleaning out his residence, as you did with the mansion, you suddenly encounter Barry's voice from beyond the door.
No, that wasn't part of our deal. But it's not necessary to destroy S.T.A.R.S. What about my family? If I play my cards right. Jill!
Barry, I heard someone talking.
Oh, you heard. I think age is starting to take its toll. Talking to myself is becoming a bad habit.
Totally ignoring that, inside you'll also find a document detailing how Plant 42 is reacting to the T-virus. At this point, you already found a researcher's will in the mansion talking about the research on the estate. Last month, there was an accident in the lab and the virus we were studying leaked. This virus robs its victims of their humanity, forcing them in their sickness to seek out and destroy life. Okay, hi. Little editing mishap here. The part I just read out loud is only seen on the crypt Chris side of the story. Jill gets this will handed to her by Barry and a piece is ripped off, so you don't get the full picture. Again, just noticed this in editing. So joke's on me, I guess, haha. So what is the T-virus exactly? Let's not do... No, I'm not... No. I'm not doing that right now, no. Down the line, you might come across a chemical puzzle. This puzzle actively requires you to write down calculations in the classic video game kind of way. You know, math. It is necessary to make V-Jolt, a specific chemical that, upon use on the plant's roots, will make them go away. What is this plant everyone keeps talking about? We already spoke of Neptune and the Aqua Ring in an earlier section, so that was a bit of a spoiler. But this used to be Guardhouse is pretty much the first time you reach a connection to the underground labs. While you were down there in the Aqua Ring, you might have encountered these vines. Albeit not very fun, having this V-Jolt on you requires you to backtrack to the Aqua Ring. But upon reaching the plant roots, you can use this chemical. And on first sight of the destruction of the roots, there doesn't seem to be a lot of payoff in the room itself. So what was the use of it all? There is an upper floor of the residence where the bulb of the plant resides. This is normally a boss fight where you wait for the weak spot to open so you can spray it with ammo. You can get poisoned, slapped, and just generally die quickly if you're unprepared. But having used the V-Jolt on the roots will just disintegrate the plant, making it so you don't need to fight the boss at all, as Barry runs in with a flamethrower to help you in the cutscene. This is normally a full boss fight, I just want to point that out again. You can basically skip it. There are probably some other triggers like having Barry around, but I don't fully understand it. I just know that this skips an entire tedious boss fight. If you're playing as Chris and didn't go through the effort to use the V-Jolt, you end up being grabbed by Plant 42. Rebecca runs in to grab the book, and guess what? It's another hero time! Time to go make that V-Jolt to save Chris. This event will occur only if you did not save Richard with the serum. Oh my god, all the flags in this game, Jesus Christ. This leads to finding an item labeled the helmet key. With every room in the residence being turned upside down, there's no use to stick around. You should leave the residence greened out, meaning you have picked up every possible note or item in a room. And despite me glossing over it in very short descriptions, this little side mansion was its own lengthy thing. The very last thing you'll encounter over here is a cutscene with Wesker. Also, funny detail, his shades disappear in the reflection of the window. So he's still alive, but just like you probably, he's kinda sus of Barry venting out loud. But also, Wesker has been nowhere in sight up until now. So, it's up to you, I guess? Good luck, kiddo! After safely returning to the mansion, you... These are the hunters. For a limited time, they become more common than regular zombies. They have two different forms of attack. They either swipe at your legs or jump and slash at your torso, which if they're close enough could result in decapitation. Something that is pretty cool about these hunters is that they have the ability to make the game more open world. They bust down several smaller rooms and remove the necessity of opening a door and triggering a cutscene. I like that. The whole pace of the mansion increases. In terms of enemies, not in terms of other parts. Okay, some annoying puzzles tend to show up in this later part of the game, like moving statues around with subtracting walls and turning the statues. Just a lot of shoving, and it's super slow, and I could do without any of that. It's also at this point that you truly start to figure out why you're here. It's not a rescue mission. This was a deliberate ruse. In the Falcon room, or trophy room, whatever, you'll find some mail to the chief of security. A nice little step-by-step guide on what to do on the approaching X-Day. This mysterious umbrella corporation is behind luring us here. Oh boy, I can't wait till we finish the game and discover all of their secrets, right? This is the point where you pretty much wrap up the mansion. Where do I go? Yeah, wasn't this supposed to be where it all took place? Well, yeah, but no. Like any good video game, you're supposed to check behind the waterfall in the courtyard. This leads to an underground area. Here's where you will find Enrico.
Is that you, Jill?
Is that voice Enrico's?
Yeah?
You're alive!
Stop! Are you with anybody, Jill?
No, but why?
The stars are finished. Someone is a traitor. Umbrella set us up.
Enrico!
Traitor? Who?
After Encanto's demise, you are left to wander these pathways, and honestly, I don't care for this area at all. Yeah, it makes sense that an underground facility is built into cavernous areas, but it's just so boring and dirt brown and boring and the same backtracking over and over and over. It's just pathways upon pathways of underground caverns with nothing really interesting being around. I could talk about the puzzles and the things you need to do, but it's not worth talking about, really. It's just, oh, okay, I gotta get out of here. That may just be personal taste. I'm gonna come clean on that. At least there's another Imbiamba Jones trap.
Ah, big scary. Yeah, it's a boulder coming at you. That's not, no.
I think this is the point where Chris reaches his sexual awakening towards boulders. Good for you, Chris. Good for you. You meet up with Barry, see the monster, go back to Barry, and then Oh. Okay, bye then. You guys getting close to figuring out who the traitor is? Continuing on with the getting out of here part, eventually you find this room. I'll let the room speak for itself. The most important aspect can be found on the other side of the room. It's a little lived-in area, with a warm bed meaning it's been recently used, and a family picture tucked safely into a treasure box. I think it's about time that we start talking about Lisa Trevor. Lisa Trevor was conceived during development of the original Resident Evil. Planner Yasuyuki Saga wrote her into his Trevor Memoirs file, which was to explain that the various puzzles and booby traps were designed by architect George Trevor on behalf of Dr. Oswald E. Spencer. Ultimately, it got the better of him, as he was just used by Umbrella to throw away after he outlived his purpose to them. Lisa was to be his daughter, having been abducted by agents of Spencer and killed. Sega petitioned for the file's removal in the final weeks of development, as elements of the file contradicted others. A reimagined version of the file was published in '97 as part of the True Story Behind Biohazard promotional book. This game was Lisa's first canonical appearance. Rather than hiring flagship writer Nobuo Sugimura to create the game's story from scratch, Shinji Mikami instead polished the archived development documents from the original game. By autumn of 2001, Mikami felt a need to create original elements for the game rather than slavish devotion, leading to the creation of a recurring Lisa Trevor enemy that would appear in the story itself rather than simply a mention in files. We already spoke of several diaries and notes you may have found throughout the game. Some of them, however, are scattered across different pages. You also find bits and pieces of some specific diary entries, all tied to a single family picture. You will find the first collection of these notes in the shed, the one you were knocked out in. While the Keeper's Diary was more of a frightening setup, this is a really sad one. The original diary entries seem written by a child looking for their parents, seemingly having done something horrible to them and not capable of understanding what's wrong. She's confused and scared. The next part of these notes you will find in the room with all the dolls. The first thing attached is a summarization, one of the administration of the virus upon the Trevor family members. Jessica, sadly, didn't make it, but Lisa, she needs further observation. Another part of the diary can be found attached as well. The whole picture is starting to make a little bit more sense now. Her mom is nowhere in sight, so she goes on a quest to give her mom her face back. But nobody else can have the face, so she does the next best thing and attach the face to her own. This one is a pretty rough read. I feel upset every time I read it. This is not the end of the journal, but you can already sorta make sense what's going on. That's right, you wind up back at the shack where Lisa knocked you out. Final time I'm saying this, but back to the mansion. You're in an altar. Surely, this bodes well.
Jill, you're alive. I was worried because I thought you were
start talking.
Calm down. I didn't want to do it. Believe me, I can explain.
Don't lie to me!
No time to talk. Jill, hand me my gun!
If you give Barry his gun back, he will assist you by distracting Lisa, and also show up in the ending segments of the game. If you don't give him the gun, well, there he goes. Bye, Barry. So, you still can't knock down Lisa with bullets. So you're basically trapped here. Or not. Somewhere in the beginning of part 2, I said the game's documents and diary entries are supposed to give you some ideas about how to handle enemies. Now, if you've read Lisa's diary, you know you need to move these stones. If you didn't read the diary, you can probably just tell from simple game design that this is what you're supposed to be doing. In the sarcophagus, you find the last remaining entry to the family portrait notes. It's a very sad letter from Jessica Trevor to her daughter, Lisa Trevor. Even though the T-virus claimed Lisa's life, there's a little bit of clarity left in her mind. Lisa Trevor is without a doubt the most interesting element about Remake. I totally understand why they put her back in after scrapping her from the original game. I love the fact that she was actually in the new movie. Good job, movie. Now make a better one. So now that we figured out that Barry is not a threat, or kinda not a threat, it's weird that Jill doesn't take the time to confront Barry about his actions, but oh well. One FMV later, and we have finally made our way into the Umbrella Laboratories. First off, super refreshing to just see some regular zombies. I miss these guys. Also bugs, named Chimeras, I guess. They're stupid. This laboratory section is There is this really fun X-ray puzzle though, but what I want to show you is this note. It is designated for one Ada. Play the next RE and you'll see what this means. The same goes for the letter of William Birkin. It's cool that these stories are intertwining as they're basically happening at the same time, but don't need to be told at the same time. Yes, I am talking to you, Resident Evil Move. Speaking of film, we finally get to watch Kenneth. To everyone's surprise, it's him in the mansion. And there's zombies. That's it. Wow. Zombies! This is such a weird place to put this. I don't get why this wasn't accessible sooner. At least we're getting some answers. There's a projector in this lab that shows the staff members attached to the bioorganic weapon testing. If you look right next to Josh Gad in the middle, you might see a spectacled friend standing there. Either that's Duke Nukem or someone we've seen before. Also, check this guy just staring intensely. It's like Norman Osborn at the board meeting.
But you can't do this to me.
Something about a tyrant as well, so whatever. The final leg of this section involves you finding your buddy Chris, or Jill, being all useless in a jail cell. Can't bust them out yet, so leave them there for the time being. You're far busier with the fuel supply capsule that if you run too hard with will blow everything up. So better be careful. Yeah, but it's not that hard, so. Especially if you were smart and explored first, killed all the bugs, and then have no enemies to face. Then it's just a matter of taking the elevator back up.
Jill.
Barry.
You could have at least waited up for me, you know?
Let's go.
To everyone's complete and utter shock, it appears that the GigaChat Wesker is actually betraying everyone. He's the one controlling Barry's actions, and he's the one wanting to cover up all the tracks left behind. Maybe you didn't realize by the blatant mentioning of someone with sunglasses in an early document. Again, a reminder that this was only readable on the Chris side of the story. He says he doesn't work for Umbrella, but yet he does. And yeah.
Jill and Barry together. In hell.
Actually, he's just super interested in awakening the tyrant. Wesker was about to call out the tyrant's sex life.
Premature.
But he gets pimp slapped to the side. Oh, and so does Barry. This massive hulking beast in front of you. This amalgamation of all the horrors you have faced thus far. This is a really cool, albeit short fight. You just gotta make sure you don't accidentally forget your healing items and don't run into a dead end. The game ends with a self-destruct sequence. This is your last chance to leave, and if you've played your cards right with all surviving S.T.A.R.S members, in our case, Barry and Chris, this is when you go and bust your buddy out of jail. Don't actually forget to pick up Barry after that boss fight. Wait, where did Wesker go? Anyway, it's time for an actual countdown. No internal clock shenanigans. You make your way up to the helipad with 3 minutes on the clock. It's time to leave this nightmare behind. You signal Brad, ready for pickup. Okay, so guess you need to take a little bit of time defending yourself. Oh, and Barry. After some time, Brad arrives and tosses you a rocket launcher. Okay then. Merry Christmas, you filthy— Oh. Okay, let's try that again. Merry Christmas, you filthy— and hey! It's finally over. You get one of the 12 possible endings depending on who you've saved and whether or not you blew up the mansion, and you ride out into the sunset. The mansion is no more. You escaped the survival horror. Congratulations, gamer! You did it! This end result screen shows how long you took to get the fuck out. The game actively encourages speedrunning, actually, locking some achievements behind beating the game in, say, less than 3 hours. First thing you unlock is a Once Again mode. It's basically New Game Plus. Selecting this allows you to use your unlocked content that you earned by beating the game, such as unlocked costumes and infinite ammo for whatever weapons you unlocked, such as the rocket launcher or the samurai edge. A harder difficulty setting is also available in this mode. If you complete the game again with the other character, it unlocks one dangerous zombie mode. This mode adds a new zombie to the mansion, one wearing a vest stacked with grenades. So yeah, it appears in limited amounts, but it's still pretty fucking scary. It stops spawning once you return from the residence with the helmet key though. So there you go, those are your unlockables. Is what I would say if there were more things to unlock. Real survival mode is unlocked after completing Once Again. In this mode, the game is set to hard difficulty. Auto-aim does not work, and the item boxes are no longer interconnected. The item box part is actually based on the prototype of the original game. Testers complained that the item boxes were not linked, so they fixed it for the main game, but you can still return to these prototype routes in this mode. And if that's not enough bang for your buck, after beating this mode, you unlock Invisible Enemy mode. While playing this mode, all enemies are, as the name suggests, invisible. Completing the mode in under 5 hours unlocks a congratulatory bonus image, and alongside it, a personal message from the game's director, Shinji Mikami, and concepts of unused costumes. I can't stress enough how this game keeps on giving more and more content. For a game from 2002, that is amazing. I guess we finally finished the scripted part of this video. This video went on a little bit longer than expected. To summarize everything I rambled about, some parts were serious, some parts I made a joke out of, or at least attempted to. It got analytical, it got chronological, it got
mathematical!
Finn, you're terrible at math.
I think my experience can be boiled down to a few key elements. This game is perfect-ish. Is it flawless? Nah. To me, it feels like I can barely spot any flaws, but I know it's not gonna be everyone's cup of tea. Even if the content keeps on delivering, you'll find some stuff to complain about. I sure did. Some puzzles don't really age well. Some locations don't fit the same mold of backtracking that the mansion had. Depending on whether or not you want to give this a shot, maybe the more modern Resident Evil 2 remake might be more your speed. But in terms of presentation, this game has it all. It is peak survival horror. As an anecdote, I had to record some footage of the tank controls, and I feel like I should really give it a shot somewhere down the line. Even though people might consider it archaic, it's the way the game was originally made, and I should stop being a pussy and just try it out. Remake knows it is a game. That means that it doesn't shy away from being silly at times. However, these silly moments do not take away from the eerie atmosphere that this game sets up. And I believe a lot of it is thanks to the performances that are given. Character portrayals are great. The voice acting is stellar, even with the goofy classic Resident Evil script. A lot of the actors have actually returned for some fan projects and interactions, and it's really cool how they're embracing these moments from their career. I remember most of the main characters in this game quite fondly, but I'm going to be blunt. Jill's side gets all of the story. The betrayal of Barry, her interactions with him, compare that to the lighthearted antics of Rebecca and Chris that don't really go anywhere. Yeah. The story really depends on how much effort you put into reading the notes. It isn't like the Souls games, where a lot of lore and backstory is hidden behind item descriptions, but yet it is. The thing is, there's only a handful of notes in this game. Every time I picked one up, it felt good to learn a little bit more about the world I was playing in. I feel like a lot of the game counts on the more memorable, haunting moments, with the only real exceptions being Lisa, Trevor, and the soft betrayal of Barry. That's it in terms of story maybe, but this game exceeds in atmosphere and presentation, more so than any modern horror in my eyes. I'm not trying to call it one of those A24 slow burners peak Kino, but there's a reason I have returned to this game about once a year. If you've watched this in full, congratulations. If you watched it in chunks or just skipped to this part to hear my summary, congratulations as well. If you'd like to see more content like this, consider subscribing and letting me know in the comments what you thought. I would actually love to do more of these, so your feedback is pretty much exactly what I need. As I said, I have never made a video like this, so if you have any remarks or things to say, the comment section is your sanctuary. I also still stream on Twitch, although this video was my current hyper-focus, so I haven't gone live in a hot minute. You can find me under the name VanitasMV. I will add a link in the description, and I'm planning to be back soon. This video took over the past 3 weeks of my life, and I'm really glad it did. There are a lot of people on this platform that really inspire me, and I hope this video has given you maybe a little bit of joy and entertainment, if only for the amount of time it took you to watch this. I've played most of the Resident Evil remakes and remasters so far. RE2 Remake modernizes Resident Evil for a massively well done horror experience with an outstanding story, while the remake of Resident Evil 3 takes RE into a more action-oriented direction with several misses. It becomes a lot easier to switch from this first remake to the second one, but if you really just want to get a hold of Resident Evil for a first try, either one goes. In the grand scale of it all, I think Remake, this first one, has the most consistent survival horror experience out of all three of them. RE2 comes in at a close second. They're both there on top for me. Oh, and guess what? At the time of recording this, they announced a totally not priorly leaked Resident Evil 4 remake in Sony's State of Play last night. So, fuck. I really gotta keep playing this franchise. Jokes aside, I'm actually really excited to talk about the other remakes on this channel, whenever that might be. And I'm even more so excited to get further into the franchise. I still haven't touched Code Veronica, 0, or even 4. Yeah, I do have some ways to go. But I'm excited. There's a lot more Biohazard out there. And I'm ready to discover what it's all about. Thank you for watching.
In hell.